Hello, Tim. Hello, Subhash.
Well,
Yeah, hi everyone.
Hi everyone, I'm so sorry I was a few minutes late. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Good, you spoke. Okay, I'm super sorry. I'm actually in a different office today and it took me a little bit of time to actually figure out the network here. Um, I think we have everybody around. I can just kick in. Um, I actually started creating a draft presentation for TSC Friday afternoon, and I shared some update on the Slack channel. I don't expect that everybody would have seen that. Maybe it was weekend. Some of you might have taken a look at that. Some of you might not have got a chance. But my goal for today's agenda was to just open this slide and review with every working group lead and identify a good status for that working group to be presented to TSC, and of course also the right messaging. And if you guys are joining the TSC call, if I'm presenting, you have to chime in and add a little bit more. I'm very happy with that. If some of you are not going to be able to there, I would like to know exactly how we should reflect that at the TSC level. So any questions on that? Any questions, thoughts, ideas?
Yeah, so one question is this, Sana, is this related to the R3 can the use cases specifically, or what is the scope of this presentation?
Good. So basically, I don't want to restrict this to R3. My hope is that we share the progress of where things are. We share the process and how we are coming up with the incremental releases, how we are trying to exchange our user stories on the RX scope and planning meeting with SIG2, how SIG2 is trying to give their feedback, how we are trying to refine on the requirements, and how we are moving forward. This is actually contributing towards the bucket of use cases candidates for R3, but not all the progress that we have made is going to become a part of R3. So basically, I want to show all the progress by SIG1 and the efforts towards R3. And of course, R3 is a holistic work, and I don't feel that we have still clearly identified the scope for R3. If that's what Kandan is looking for, maybe those are the things that we could discuss at the TSC level and come up with some decisions. Does that help? I was going to basically share the document and then go one by one through the working group updates. Ravi, did that answer your question?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's
right?
mostly, I think, focused on the workflow and the current state of where we are.
Yeah, basically helping TSP and Kandan understand that there has been some agreements between SIG1 and SIG2 recently. Those agreements need to be shared at the TSC level. For example, we started the model of working on templates, the template that was decided by SIG2, and we are creating a user stories in that template that has been strictly adhered to. All the user stories produced are more or less following that template. Do we need a revision to the template? Do we need more information on to be added to the template? Things like that are in the process of constant improvement. Basically, that needs to be shared. And if we share all the user stories, maybe that's a little bit of iterative process for the SIG2 to be able to fully understand that is this the next step that they can take on their side or not. The convergence between SIG1 and SIG2 is basically an evolutionary process, and that's what we want to bring to the TSC's attention. And also a little bit of TSC's focus on the fact that the increment, we are doing releases like waterfall, we do like R2, R3, but in the actual working model agreed between this community at the moment is more agile, as this is going to be an incremental evolution, incremental development, ongoing, continuous sharing of the user stories and continuous understanding of the user stories and continuous POCs and that model. So basically to help Kandan set that messaging right, and whatever the messaging is with the external world, at least set the expectations right at the TSC level. That's all in my mind. I'm just sharing, and I'm happy for feedback. Anything else that we should bring up at the TSC level, that's the forum where we can add more. Questions, comments, feedback? Okay. So I'm going to dive into these slides. These are not perfect yet. I would have really liked Alexi to be back and have him by my side as we are working towards these. But Alexi is not back yet. This Wednesday, will do my best to present, of course, with your help. Some of the high-level updates here were the things that I just talked about. What has recently happened? How do we improve our working model? How have the SIG, the various working groups leads taken ownership of their working groups, and how various working groups are starting to make progress? One working group, the architecture working group, have not made the significant progress yet because we couldn't find the right time slot. But we were hoping that the RX scope and planning meeting could be leveraged for the architectural discussions that same time slot once we have kind of exchange the prepared and mature user stories at that level, and we could use that same meeting there. So high-level updates on this slide. And then I started looking into ORAN, where we have the most user stories published at the moment. And I'll give to Tim, if Tim, you are on the call, to help me get the full perspective of the ORAN working group progress and status at the moment.
Yeah, so we have, because it's on the board, so we do keep the board up to date. So as you said, there's 3 of the use cases that went through the ARC scoping so far, so they can be assessed for release. And then we have 3 others, which is create cluster, delete cluster, and register O cloud, that still has got to be, is being reviewed by the working group first, but they're nearing ready. I think a lot of this was we had Alexis off and followed and just trying to force that stuff through. So I think that's going to be the next set that goes through. There was a new use case that came out of a request that came out of the scoping that was to create a use case specific for the XF deployment without an SMO in addition to the near real-time RIC. But I think there won't be any additional scoping needs for that. It's just a additional use case that they wanted to split out. So that would have to be reviewed by the group. And then we have a couple other items that we're looking at, past use cases, where we need to start looking at providing requirements to service assurance based upon some of the ORAN use cases. We've kind of been doing this, as needed, but we'll do it more formally as a group. And then we want to do some work of investigating FCAPs and configuration management and how it can coexist with the O1 and NEPIO enablers. So those will be a follow-on to get through these set of use cases. And then we'll start looking at, of course, the next set of use cases that we want to bring in. I don't know if that's what you're looking at.
Absolutely. Everything that has been done, the progress, things in the pipeline, and the forward-looking view of like what could happen next, I think that's a good update from the work group too. So I'll update these. I'll follow the board to basically fill out the missing stories here. If you find a chance, Tim, feel free to put in things if I mistakenly didn't do something right. But I think I have a very good converged information about the working group too at the moment. Any of the important artifacts that you produced, I think, are worth sharing as well. For example, the architectural diagrams. If that's the part of user stories is already covered there, I think we are fine. But if that's an important artifact, we could share that update as well.
They're actually part of the user stories. So, I think there's only one, like the SMO organization. They're all in the user stories folder.
Okay.
So
okay, perfect.
They're either in the document or as a PowerPoint presentation that accompanies the user story.
Okay, that's perfect. So I will add these links and make sure that I have everything. I'll tag you, Tim, to take a look at the final PowerPoint and see if that's looking good. Meanwhile, do you attend the DSP meetings yourself or no?
Haphazard. I can attend if needed.
This Wednesday, if you can be on, I think would be very good. If I cover some things and there are some other follow-up questions, and if your feedback is important, I think would be really good to be there this Wednesday meeting, since we are presenting.
I have TSC on Thursday. That's what's weird.
Yeah, Thursday. Yeah.
Oh,
8 to 8
it's Thursday.
PST.
Oh,
okay.
Okay.
Okay, my bad. I had in my mind like somewhere this Wednesday. It's Thursday. It's okay. That's exactly what it is. I double checked as well.
Okay, sorry. I could, I'll prioritize that.
It's
it's
10,
8
a.m.
CST. Yeah, you're right. You're right, Sana.
8
Yes,
PT,
PST.
right? Okay, perfect. I have been not attending the DSC calls for quite some time because 8 a.m. is actually my kid's school drop-off hour, and Kandan knows that. But with the daylight saving time will shift again for me. It would become 9 a.m. and then I will start joining these again. But until then, for this particular meeting, I will make some arrangement and make sure that we are there, I'm there, and we're presenting. And happy to see that, Tim, you could join as well. And ping me if something comes up, if you cannot, or we'll keep in touch. So any other updates, questions on workgroup 2? Well, I am then going to move on to the next workgroup, which was kind of very interesting for me. Is Karen here? And Karen did go into this site and he did put all the status because I didn't do that. If Karen's not here, anybody else from the modeling work group would share the
No.
update of where
Karen
this
has
effort is?
posted that it's not going to be available today in this SIG architecture channel.
Okay, I'm not updated, so I just logged in again. I think when I was about to join the meeting, I might have missed the chat. Tol, do you have any visibility into the progress of the modeling group and could share the progress of where things are?
I don't think we made progress.
It's fine. Okay,
Yeah.
so on taking a step back, it's fine we don't have user stories. It's fine that we don't have nothing for the RX to be done in the short term. But I have seen some documentation in which all the proposals are put together. So there is a proposal by you, there is a proposal from Bernard. The discussion of those proposals have been underway. Has there been any convergence in the modeling group to even agree that are we following a KRM as a higher level modeling language for the development of those workflows? Is there any progress in convergence on the ideas as well, or not?
So Sana, I think Siran has mentioned in his chat that he has updated the TSC presentation with some information about modeling.
This is the slide he updated. Like I'm on the slide. So he
Okay.
said one meeting so far since the meeting series started up again recently. Reviewed
Yeah.
prior art modeling and a few discussed options for the community to progress. One user story to generate documentation from existing models is under development. First review will this week.
Yeah, I think
So
probably it's in a
basically
very
there
early
is no
stage.
convergence.
Well,
think so.
there's something he did mention here. I'm surprised, but we did. Eric kind of submitted our CRDs to a website that automatically generates documentation for CRDs. That's kind of related to documentation, maybe, but that helps us kind of see the whole CRDs as they are right now in a kind of nice way instead of looking at the code. Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning Eric's contribution here.
Okay. Don, can you help me relate? How does those CRDs enable you to come up with a modeling decision?
Well, it helps us look at the current state of our models, right? To know where they are right now. We have quite a bit, and as in my document, I kind of did that manually, but I point out that we don't just need the CRDs. We need kind of an explanation of the CRDs. So I, for example, created a few diagrams that show how they relate to each other. They're not 100% correct. Wim had some comments. So yeah, we're making progress into documenting our current state of models.
Okay, excellent. And Don, I'm asking a difficult question, but maybe TSC will ask those questions, and I hope that you are also on the TSC calls, right?
Correct.
Good. Big questions. Are we aligned towards KRM, or is there any inclination towards Tosca, or there is just at the stage where these ideas are being assessed and there is no direction decided yet?
There's no direction. I have a Tosca POC that I hope to show at some point. It uses a kind of straightforward heuristic where Tosca is, there's a Tosca profile that goes directly into our CRDs, right? So it's kind of a one-to-one, different language, but same structure.
Have you made any progress with the KRMs as well? Like, or even at the level of like, even at the level of like documentation to show the relational model between CRDs and KRM.
I'm sorry, what is CRM?
They're the same, right? KRM and CRD is the same.
Yeah,
it's an implementation of a KRM. A CRD is an implementation of a KRM.
Right. I'm trying to understand that from the CRDs, how would we arrive at a higher level model that is a little bit more abstract and that establishes the topology of different resources underneath? So maybe something at a higher level. What would that be? Is that going to be Tosca agreed, or is there something else that this community has considered so far?
We have not gotten to that
okay.
point. Yeah, okay. The language is not like the mechanics of how we do it. We don't know quite yet, but I think more important is to decide the content, right? What are the components? How do they relate to each other? What are our models, right? We assume that at the end, the models might be, well, they're always declarative, right? But the question is how they relate to actual implementations, right? And there are issues here that go, for example, into Etsy, which uses Tosca, to ORAN, right, which sometimes uses KRM, right? That's also a work in progress, and possibly even Yang models and, you know, the data model and how we relate to that. So there are a lot of very big questions. I think we're very much in the infancy. What does KRM stand for? Sorry, I don't know what that is.
Something resource
KRM is
modeling.
Kubernetes resource model, the Kubernetes
Yeah.
resource model, no?
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, I threw me off. I thought you were talking about something else. Yeah, of course.
So if this is a cloud native project and it has all the CRDs, one natural evolution of that would be KRM doing the higher level modeling as well as all the CRDs that they're producing at the resource level. There is one. It was in my mind. I was very excited about what Tall was bringing forward about Tosca, because in my I don't attend the modeling meetings, but I probably should sometimes to share the feedback on the maturity level of Tosca across the industry on all 5G core. On it's a community choice sometimes. If you look at the way how the 5G core and those vendors have evolved, a lot of their network functions now we're receiving Tosca packages from them rather than Helm charts. So this has been a significant maturity in the artifacts that you receive from those vendors. So that's where the maturity of Tosca is at the moment in that side of the world. And it's generally the way I say community adopts one modeling language versus the others. Yang is extremely popular on the transport side. This has been my perception. Everybody, even within our Dallas team, only knows about Yang. They don't care about Tosca. They have probably never looked into that. It could be the community direction or choice, driven by standards. For example, Etsy is driving this side, and maybe TM Forum or other standards are driving that side. Maybe that's where Yang is coming from. And I haven't seen any implementations of KRM used at that level. And you
right.
said, Don, go ahead.
Yeah, there's, you know, each one of these is its own kind of adventure, right? Yang, we have talked quite a bit about the difference between our information model and data model, you know, and kind of teasing those out. Yang is often used for, usually, right? It was invented for data, right? However, we do know that Yang has grown up quite a bit and is used for the same space where Tosca is used. That is, Yang is used for modeling topologies, right? So
Yeah.
some of you might remember Rift.io that did some work on it. So yeah, but we're not quite level at the actual technologies. I think we're more at the level of let's make sure our models are very clear and well designed, and then we can talk about how we integrate into various modeling subsystems, right?
Yeah.
And
you brought up
a big component too is observability, and where kind of Yang comes in, and how we deal also with the data coming out of our workloads, right?
Absolutely. So it's interesting, Tall, you mentioned Rift.io. I have been working very closely, still working very closely with that project. There is a commercial version of that as well. There was an open source version of that. They use a combination of Tosca and Yang, which is interesting because because Tosca is sometimes not there in terms of describing all the topology and everything that is required to describe in the telco context. So wherever they find gaps, they switch to Yang. So basically, when we look at their higher level modeling workflows, it's generally a combination of Yang and Tosca, and they switch between the two. So
yeah, you know, I'm
it's
very
kind of
biased. I'm
hybrid.
working on Tosca 2.0 right now.
Okay,
Very,
that would be
very
much better
hard.
than where they are, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think for us right now, the way I look at it right now for a modeling, I mean, if you look to how the Kubernetes system is working right now, right? Or at least that's my perspective, is you define an entity, right? Which is a CRD or a KRM thing. And it's typically what, if you design it well, you can reuse it in various flavors, right? So I think if you look to, I describe the Kubernetes model as you build a component that is reusable in various forms, right? And how you consume it is not the direct discussion in the KRM system. It is more whether it is, whether it lives on its own, basically. And if you need 20 things of these things, okay, you instantiate 20 things. So that's what so it's a bit of a different philosophy in my view. It's basically it focus on its let's say independence and own life cycle of that thing. And if you want to build something on top that consumes it 20 times, you can do so. So it's a very different philosophy.
Yeah, I see that. So is
And
that
so
user-friendly or
the
no?
challenge that you sometimes have, sometimes the challenge that I have with these modeling systems, if I'm honest, is they focus on the model, on how it works end to end, but it's much better to decompose it as a system that each and every component works individually and independently. And if you achieve that, then how you consume doesn't matter as much.
100%.
And it also depends on how the users are exposed to that modeling, right? Was it made user-friendly? Is it mature enough in the current state of things where the use cases are driven? Is it complete in terms of expressing the things that the user need at that stage? So I'm going to give you one practical example because I'm working on that. What we do with our existing service orchestration, of course, we are using Tosca as much as we can, and we developed something that is a very etsy term called NSD. And it's a very commonly adopted model at the moment for everything. And I keep hearing questions. And of course, you can understand in the brownfield, it's also Helm, right? We don't have operators and CRDs everywhere. So in the current state of things, people say, oh, I have the Helm chart package and I can deploy it. Why do I really need NSD? Like, why would I do the extra effort of creating a model on the top and be working towards that? So one good explanation that we, sorry, I'm switching the rooms here. So one good explanation that we came up with the use of developing the NSD was to be able to refer to that whole application that is developed on the Kubernetes with maybe 85 plus microservices as one object. So then there are possibilities of doing like lifecycle management at the application level. You are not interfacing with the individual artifacts within the Helm chart, but you are dealing with one NSD because that exposes one API where you could establish more policies around that to say, I want to heal this application. I want to scale this application. I want to do something with a software upgrade. I want to turn it off. I want to bring it back up again. That logic becomes very simple when you have a higher order modeling language, one workflow, and you could refer to that one workflow, which actually holistically put the resources together in the right topology, in the right order, and has everything packaged as a part of it. This is at least my view of why we need it.
I'll put it this way, Helm, as I like to say, is an anti-pattern. Helm is KRM, but it uses text templating to create it. You need a programmer to create a Helm chart. An architect cannot create a Helm chart, right? But an architect can create a Tosca topology. It's designed for exactly that role, right? So that's the huge difference.
Correct. And we develop those NSDs with the designer tool. Like we just upload the Helm chart and we understand the topology of the Helm chart by the Helm chart itself, and then we generate Tosca off of it. And it's relatively easier to generate Tosca, and some tools generate Tosca for you. As you said, it's agnostic to the lower level details. That's why it's probably easier for the compilers to produce that with certain information. And that's because it makes it user friendly. And that's why I'm saying that what we are currently doing is very user friendly. Everybody can develop those NSDs, and everybody is developing those NSDs across the organization. And in telcos, that is generally one of the things making something easier for them, for the users, I think is an important aspect of decision making. But I think that's just one story. We should hear more from Bernard and Eric on how they're doing it and what their inclination towards that are. But that's where my thought process is at the moment. I'm in favor of Tosca is what I'm all saying. So any more thoughts, ideas on this? So keep going.
No, my only point is there is various ways to achieve that.
Yes, I agree.
And Tosca is one of them, I think. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, I'm not saying it's the only solution, but I'm saying that in my so far experience of using these approaches, I have felt that Tosca has given us some freedom in the development, and we have seen some success. Maybe the same success can come from relatively different approach, as if that model becomes mature and be fully developed. Maybe that's the exact same level of user friendliness that could come from it. But I'm a happy user of Tosca is what I'm sharing. All right. So for now, I think it would be correct to say that we are at the stage of brainstorming where everybody is participating, where we have the work group lead assigned, where all this discussion that we just had is in the state of convergence under the modeling group. And we haven't produced any artifact or a user story that could be consumed for the short-term focus, but that's a work in progress. Any cross synergies with ORAN in this modeling group? Or it's too early?
Well, it's all the same people, so it's definitely on our mind. Yeah.
And it's immature to talk about the modeling while we haven't even fulfilled the user stories at the basic level yet, right, in the ORAN.
Right. There is an effort, Alexei and others, some people from Google and many companies to get official KRM support in ORAN, so that the models, so ORAN will publish their KRM, their CRDs, right? We already have some of it in ORAN, but it's not comprehensive across the board. This is ongoing, but it does seem to be successful. So it's in one way great, but in the other way, we have to think how we deal with ORAN models, because our system is very, very different. But at least as long as it's all KRM, we're in a great position. And declarative, of course, that's the big deal, because ORAN originally was more imperative in its APIs, right? But yeah, if we move to declarative, it's far more compatible with Nephio.
And you're saying that ORAN is inclined towards using KRM. It's kind of like well received, of course, by all the O1 participants there.
Well, you know how the ORAN community is. I would say generally there's good reception. There's some resistance, and it's ongoing.
Okay. I think we have some good information for us to share with DSE. And if all you're there, feel free to contribute, top up with the current state of things with our modeling discussion so far.
Yeah, and if Kieran is there, yeah.
Okay, absolutely. Kieran joins. I think we have.
Hey guys, just to be clear, I wouldn't state that ORAN stuff. I don't know where we're getting this information from, but to say that ORAN is official, ORAN is KRM, I think pushing things a bit. So I don't know exactly what the context is. I'm just saying, ORAN does many things. They use Helm, stuff like that. So let's not go there, because let's just try to solve the problem for Nephio first, right? Don't try to twist this up into what ORAN's doing or not doing.
Sure, I'll just point out it's DMS and IMS specifically. Yeah.
Yeah, I think yeah, DMS for sure. But I think what Tal is referring to, the cluster templates and the cluster creation use case, that's also part of Nephio right now.
Yeah, but even if you look at the DMS, even when you're looking at the DMS, it's the difference between what gets packaged, what is done in the SMO, and then what is finally provided to the O Cloud via the DMS. So again, I don't know if let's focus on Nephio, and then we'll figure out how best to utilize the ORAN services to accomplish the goal. I don't want to think that ORAN is just KRM, because it's not.
Oh no, yeah.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think this message has to go out in a very careful way, which only means that ORAN is a very big momentum. It's a very big organizational effort. Lots of organizations are there that's going with its own momentum. With the Nephio philosophy, a few people from Nephio are of the idea that if they could introduce the idea of KRM in DMS and IMS, and there are players in O2, they are actually currently contributing the O1 space towards ORAN. And if they are introducing it, it just doesn't mean that the ORAN community has accepted it. It's just a direction which they are proposing. Would that be a realistic message, Tim?
So if I had to do this, right, I would say that that ORAN has adopted a profile that is a Kubernetes profile that allows for CRDs to be the KRM model. There is initial activity in ORAN for the inclusion of KRM within the infrastructure management services, the IMS services. And there is even less. There's architectural questions that are ongoing about traditional OAM using cloud native techniques. Not even talking about KRM, it's cloud native techniques. And so that's that. And then if you get into the services themselves, the SMO services, there's even less discussion at this point because they're just talking about what is the functional decomposition of an SMO. So again, I would be, that's where ORAN sits, as of, whatever today is, right? So I think to say anything more than that probably will get us in trouble.
I agree. We will not say anything above this, but sharing that with Kandan, I think it's helpful because one of the mandate of Nephew, as we discussed in our last summit, was to find opportunities where we can cross-pollinate. If we can have a couple of people who bring these ideas to ORAN, share that's something that we are thinking could be a potential opportunity.
And that's the other thing to say is
that's all.
That's the other thing to say is that there's the cross-pollination of people that are both in ORAN, like Alexis and others that are in ORAN that are also working in Nepia, right? So there is this cross-pollination that goes through there, but to assume that there's any consensus or agreement for that, other than the DMS KDS profile, is that's really a stretch.
Agreed.
And we're even seeing this within OSC, which is the open source community, where they're coming first from Helm and then doing the translations in the SMO towards the KRM models, right? So, they're making that transition now, just now, starting that as it's very, very, this will be the first time that they're starting this, right? With our release 3, if we do the NF deployment with the SMO. So, they're just, everything is still very nascent, right? In ORAN with respect to the SMO and the use of KRM, right? Because everything else came from the old world of came from the world of Helm and such. So.
I agree, and that's a huge Wild West, Tim. I completely relate to you. There are many political reasons why not to say anything that could affect the reputation of the project. So exactly like you said, our messaging would be that there are some very early stage activities to introducing this idea at the infrastructure level because of the cross-pollination of the people that exist in Nephew and also driving the work in ORAN. And that's it. We'll pause at that point.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
That's fair, right? For Kandan to understand on our potential opportunities with ORAN going forward in the future. And that's about.
Yeah, I think Alok also summarized it well in that. We could probably take that point too. So.
Right. Thanks. The notes are here. You can dump in any ideas you have. We'll probably bring that discussion at the right level of messaging, like Tim mentioned. All right, moving on from the modeling to the next working group, which is also very critical, very important. Lots of good work has happened, but lots of discussions, and I'm expecting a lot of discussion on this one happening as we speak. Subhash, are you on the call? Did you fill this in?
Yeah, Shana.
Good.
Am I audible,
How
Shana?
would you? Yes, you are very well audible, Subhash. How would you walk us through the status of the overall progress in this work group at the moment? What do you see?
Okay, sure. So we are trying to prepare 2 user stories. So one is the impact analysis. So where we are trying to correlate the high level intent with the low level resources. And another one is our service assurance framework that we are targeting the ODU bandwidth assurance. And here we are proposing a framework which currently serve the ODU, but yeah, in future it can be expanded. And so yeah, currently we are doing the review of both the user story and the second is user story. We already discussed in the work group 3, but yeah, of course we are discussing about the feedback. And then comes to about the requirement. So the requirement of the service assurance already we are discussing with the observability team and also with the OAI team, because we are going to collect some KPI parameters, and we are going to take some action on the NF. So those aspects we are discussing with both the team. Okay, and yeah, in a whole, currently still we are progressing on our user story and trying to take the feedback. So that's the overall picture from the assurance side.
Good, Subhash. We have been seeing some presentations from you, so I think within this community we have some good idea of where the current state of things is. I think at the TSC level, I'm wondering what else do we show that this is the current progress of how things are. So when you had your meeting with the observability team, what else did you discover with the way things are currently at the moment? How much of that enables you to basically be able to see the data of the network function or data from the infrastructure? What is it that we could leverage at the moment?
Still, it is in a very high level, Stana.
Okay.
We are just providing like what kind of KPI we are targeting. Like we are trying to collect some infrastructure related KPI parameter and also the NF related. So those requirement already we delivered. And the observability team is still it's like they are working on the design and APIs, how how the service assurance could consume those parameter those KPIs from the observability. So that is still it is in a discussion phase.
Okay. So some of the work that observability team produces could actually serve as a groundwork for you to come up with more user stories and refine the existing user stories and come up with your incremental next steps, right? So that convergence and some of that groundwork is important for you to build on, right?
Yes, right.
In your work.
Right.
Okay.
But at least for the R3, we have the backup plan. Means like currently we could avoid the dependency on the observability. But yeah, R3 plus definitely there has to be some convergence between service assurance and the observability. Means like they should go hand in hand. So that we need to work on.
What is R3 backup plan?
Yeah, currently, for example, the responsibility of observability, we are trying to offload in our service assurance, the part of the service assurance. So that is our current backup plan. But yeah, as I discussed with Stephen, we could go ahead. We have the observability will provide us those APIs to consume.
So observability team will provide you some APIs.
Yeah, so that is the current discussion like I had with Stephen that we would be getting those. Yeah.
So when observability team is able to provide you some APIs, then what do we do in R3? Is there something that we have discussed, agreed?
Yeah, it is currently still very high level. It's like we just gave the requirement and we are just talking about how it's like still we did not get the APIs, but yeah, we are in a discussion phase, high level.
Okay,
so you could say
so basically you discussed your
level,
user story, right?
High level discussion.
So you discussed your user story, and
yes,
the
right,
last discussion on the user story was that it's still super complex in terms of its deliverables. There are many missing components that you have to develop, which of course are the dependencies, and there are many things and the smaller tasks that this story could be broken down into. So what you're telling me.
So the second phase actually we went into, right? Earlier, we had the multiple use cases, so we narrowed down to the ODU case. So that is now a simpler use case now. And still we have the we are taking that feedback, so that we will work on it. So we already narrowed down to the one single use case, ODU bandwidth assurance. Yeah.
So within that user story, you have at least narrowed down to that, but within that, you are also trying to refine this with the observability team on what is their current situation, like what could they offer you in terms of their KPIs, and you're looking at those APIs and trying to come up with exactly what would be a potential backup small deliverable with R3.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
And Subhash, do you attend TSC meetings or no?
No, but I would try to attend.
It's up to you. I mean, you guys have given me enough feedback. We are all converged on the ideas. I am just trying to make sure that you guys are working very hard when this is being presented to the TSC. All the good work is reflected in a positive way. And if there are some good follow-up questions, which are best answered by people who are working on things, I think that would be my ask. So it shouldn't go too long. I'll discuss that with Kandan. Maybe we need just 20 minutes or maybe half an hour. I'll discuss with him for how long do we have to be on the call. But if you can be, it's a good thing. It's optional either way. And if you can't, I think people can still reach out to you, ask questions offline. I think we are still fine.
Sarah, just to complete this R3 backup plan, you can add a third pointer that we can offload. Yeah, we can offload the observability and correlation part to the service assurance. Observability. Yeah, and correlation to service assurance.
And you discussed with Stephen, and there is some good discussion on that, right?
The second is actually with Stephen, and the third one we are currently proposing just to avoid the dependency on the observability. The third one we are proposing in our user story. This is just for the R3. For the clarification, it is just for the R3. And going forward, definitely we will work together with the observability.
Good.
Okay, thank you. I hope it's clear, right? No?
Yeah, to me it's clear. Anybody
just
else?
one question.
Questions?
Yeah, I just had one question. Is observability part of the service assurance? Is a sub-team under that, or is it like a different working group?
It's a different team actually under SIG 2. Yeah.
Under SIG 2. Okay. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there typo in the second one, service assurance framework US discussed in as discussed? I mean,
Oh, sorry, user story. You can type. Yeah, discussed
you know, we never abbreviated user story as US because you know it's very it's very brand, it's new.
yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
So you have the meeting notes, you have basically the link to your user story. I think it's pretty much complete. The site is looking okay to me. It has all the things that we discussed on a very high level. Any other questions to Subhash or anything else that you guys would like to be added to the update of this working group? I haven't taken a look at the chat. People have asked questions. Okay. There are no questions. I think it's a good discussion. It's Thursday, we know what's going on.
So I will say on this particular one, you know, again, I think while we might have a use case that's a candidate for release 3, for the service assurance, I still think that there's still questions in the group's mind as to, you know, the architecture and the components involved in the flow. So, you know, I think for us, it's still important that we inform the TSC that there's still some ongoing discussions at the architectural level, right, as to responsibilities of components and stuff like that. And I think, Wim, I think that is that accurate?
Yeah, see, I think, I mean, there's no discussion on service assurance as such, right? I think it's more about how we accomplish things and stuff like that. So we have to flush that out. And that's why my proposal is to start with the basics, right? And start step by step building it up rather than trying to say, okay, we have a big framework, but we haven't. And I think even in the framework there are some things that we need to change. But I that's why I think we should start with walk. So it's like what you did in ORAN. It's the same here, right? Walk before run, and I think so. That's my overall comment. So, and we should do that here, and as such, we will build it up gradually, which is anyhow is going to take time to get it right. Plus, I think the other thing that we are doing right now, we are introducing components, whereas there is a lot of stuff available already in the market that we can pursue. So I am also of the opinion, let's leverage what is there rather than trying to build new, right? Because there has been things already developed that we can reuse without reinventing the wheel. Right? So these are all the things that we have to discuss.
Do we have RIC available in the OSC open source?
Yeah, but
I
this
I don't
isn't
know,
what-
but
this is-
yeah, but
Yeah, so the RIC's
Yeah.
available, but this isn't what we're talking about. So what Wim is
the RIC on itself
referring
is a
to-
service assurance scenario, but that's why I'm saying it's
Yeah.
not leveraging the framework at all. Right,
No,
but
no,
it's
I
also
know that you
service
were not
assurance.
talking about that. I especially went off the track to ask this question, to basically arrive at another.
Yeah. So one of those things, remember I said in ORAN, we got to go in and start giving the requirements to the service assurance team for the RAM, right?
Right.
One of
I know
those,
you
if
said
we're going to break up, and Subhash and I actually had a conversation with this last week, but certainly it isn't from the ORAN team, was how do we take the RIC and utilize the appropriate NEFIO enablers to make for the best use of the near real-time RIC in XS, right? And so we had some initial discussions, but there wasn't, we haven't had those from an ORAN use case or ORAN working group perspective, and that's the next step for the piece of how to start laying this stuff in. I think what I was trying to refer to with Wim was that just what he was saying was that there are, if you look at the service assurance framework, right? We got components in there, but we don't know if the behavior of the components are correct, or if they can be used with some already existing capabilities or open source capabilities that are out there. And so it needs to be fleshed out further, to see how we can proceed going forward. Correct me if I got that wrong, Wim, because that's the impression.
Yeah, and it's also the, let's say, reaction time, right? Let's say, why is the near real-time RIC developed in its way right now? It doesn't use Kubernetes at all, right? It goes straight into the network components using a standardized API, because I also have to bear in mind that Kubernetes is an asynchronous system, right? It's eventual consistency, okay?
Yeah.
That's what its theme is. So it's not meant to do things in real time. So we have to use it where it's designed for, not to try to use it for everything. You see, so all of this has to be fleshed out, right? That's why I'm saying this is a very big discussion, and will take time, by the way.
Right. So I agree with you. So I'm going to speak about Nephew's vision perspective, and this is something that we discuss all the time when we receive products across the organization from different domains. So we probably have one closed loop assurance model for the 5G core, which we have operationalized. There is a different one coming from a different world, which is the ORAN world, which has kind of invented this RIC philosophy, and based on their requirements and their various closed loop latency models that make perfect sense in the world of ORAN. And that's how, of course, that particular domain is evolving around their specific requirements and their specific needs. That's all the standardized evolution of that ORAN model, right? When you boil it down to the component level details, everything deployed in cloud, everything functioning on the cloud, and a world where every component could behave essentially as a microservice, and every other component has a way to talk to you through APIs. I'm oversimplifying it. I know I'm just speaking like a cloud person. I shouldn't be. But our organization is all the time looking at the possibilities of synergies. If a 5G function requires a specific closed loop and it goes through these 4 or 5 microservices to complete its action, why would ORAN have its own world of its own components? What is at the framework level different between the two worlds that we have to have different components? So whatever the industry is doing is fine, because that's what they are designed for. They would come up with however they are trying to solve the problem best, because they are the subject matter experts. But within the Nephew architecture, I think the way it should evolve eventually is that we have to have one solution that does the service assurance, and RIC is just that. When it's out of band for Kubernetes, when it is in band, I think those are important discussions. And that demarcation point between Kubernetes and the other systems is also very important to be established. But I don't want RIC to be operating with Nephew, and we have a different service assurance paradigm for 5G core. Is that making sense to you, Tim, what I'm trying to say?
So, you know, yeah, yes and no.
Our problem is Nephew. We play independent to the world. Like, we are Nephew right now. What is the best way to solve it? I think that's where I'm trying to go.
Well, but you have to understand the domain that you're dealing with. So again, there's going to be ORAN has RICs, and those RICs may be very well be built independent of a particular cloud technology, Kubernetes,
Right.
whatever, VM, whatever, right? And so it's not going to utilize. I could have a product that does not necessarily utilize Nephew enablers, right? The observation framework, for example, right? May not utilize the observation framework because it doesn't need to. It gets all of the information that it needs through the way that it's done today. If it was working on working in a non-cloud world, right? All right.
Right.
So there will also be RIC and Nephew enabled RICs, right? That may very well be able to utilize functionality, capabilities that is provided by the Nephew open source. Maybe the observability framework that we talked about in the service assurance controller, you know, to be able to deploy the pieces, right? So that's what we're going to try to do within Nephew, to say, hey, look, in OSC, you can have a version of the RIC that uses Nephew enabler. You can still have your RIC not use them. That's no big deal, right? That's your choice of an implementation. But you could have an implementation that uses Nephew enablers. That's what we're going to go try to do, right? And what are the enablers that it needs within the context of RIC? We're not going to change the behavior of a meaning of what a RIC is, because there's going to be a ton of XApps that are going to be reliant on the interfaces of the RIC. And we certainly don't want to have those poor XApp vendors have to write 9 different flavors of their XApps depending upon where they're deployed. So I think there's going to be some pieces of that. So if that makes sense, I think that's the approach that we're trying to take, right?
That does. Thanks for the feedback, Tim. We have 2 more questions, and I have a hard stop at 11 my time. But please go for it. Who was in the order? Ravi and Subhash.
I'm not sure, Subhash. Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Okay, my comment was, I think it basically falls back on the discussion. I think was at last meeting where Owen was brought into picture. So I think wherever the service level interactions are going to be between Nephew and the specific network functions itself, I think we have not completely fleshed out the scope of how that will be handled, because with what I see, you're going to have some intermediate proxy like an EMS system or a RIC and so on. Because what does it mean to have an eventual consistency when you're actually configuring a particular stack in a particular network function? You know, these things are something from an operator's perspective, you are trying to make this come into effect because you have taken a decision, because it's a control plane action, right? Or if for a RIC, it is like, okay, I have to do this within this particular time window of milliseconds or a second or something. So I think we have to scope out exactly where does Nephew's kind of role begin and where some other mechanisms take over. I think it requires a much larger discussion.
It's a very involved discussion, Ravi. And this discussion also involves the evolution of the network functions to become cloud native. They are on the containerized world, but they are not essentially cloud native. So when do they become cloud native? And until then, what do we do? I think we have much bigger discussions that follows the idea that I proposed, and I agree. This is a journey. Meanwhile, we'll try to make incremental progress on how things make sense and what can be done, right? So all good ideas, good discussion. This cannot be wrapped up. Of course, we need more time and ideas to brainstorm on that. But I'm going to wrap up the meeting for now. Any other feedback, questions you might have, if you guys are on the DSC call, discussions and questions comes up, feel free to share your ideas there. We'll be catching up again with guys there. All right, guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the contributions to the deck as well. Bye.